now we're going to practice reading a data table and then looking at a couple situations and seeing if we're able to identify what the sample is, what the population is, and any characteristics that are being described in the situation. So, but first, let's talk about this data table at the top of the page. So, first of all, it says here's information about 10 randomly selected U.S. residents from the 2000 census. There's a tendency to get for our eyes to be initially drawn to the data table because that's kind of where the information and where the action is, but we're going to make sure that we want to read the introduction for this so we know what or who we're looking at here first. And so the first thing is that we are looking at these 10 Americans drawn from the 2000 census. So that's the answer to this first question. Who are the individuals in this data set? It's just 10 randomly selected Americans, okay, from 2000. All right, then we want to say, now we're looking at things about them. So this is a sample that's drawn from all U.S. residents. And then we're going to look at the different types of data that's being collected from each of these members. So we're going to identify whether it's numerical or categorical. Remember, for numerical data, it's expressed with a number and then usually a unit afterward, and then also if we took an average, it would tell us something. It would make a little bit of sense. And then if it's not expressed with a number, or if it is expressed with a number but taking an average doesn't make sense, then that's categorical data. So let's look at these each column and see what type of data is being collected. So for the first one, for state, what state? What are you categorized in? Are you in Kentucky or Florida, Wisconsin or Hawaii or any state on here or not on here? And so that's categorical. One it kind of jumps out that it's answered with a word, but you're categorizing yourself as being from a certain place. Number of family members. Number is kind of a hint as well. It's numerical data. Okay, and then the units in this case is people in your family. For this, age. This is numerical. We express numbers and age, and order matters. We know that it means something different to be 61 years old than being 21 years old. And so that's numerical data. And the units would be years. Most of the time we talk about age, it's in years, but we want to make sure when we're doing problems we're careful to read what units we're working with. For gender, categorized male or female. Sometimes it would be like 1 for female, 2 for male. But even if it's expressed as a number, we know that it doesn't make any sense to kind of take the average of that. Okay, so that's categorical. Marital status, married, never married, separated. Again, you're kind of saying what bucket you're in, how you're categorizing yourself. Categorical data. Total income expressed with a number. Average makes sense. That's numerical. And then travel time to work. Oh, and the income was expressed in dollars since they were Americans being surveyed. Travel time to work, numerical, makes sense to take an average. And I've got to assume that this has got to be expressed in minutes. Hopefully there wouldn't be people commuting 20 hours to work. So that's it. Okay. And then it says to describe the person in the first row. And so if we're just looking at this person, okay, and so this is a 61-year-old female who's married, so she and her spouse are the only 2 people in the house. They're living in Kentucky. This lady makes $21,000 a year and travels 20 minutes to work. So we can find out a little bit of information right away with just these kind of 7 things and get a little bit of an idea of what this person's life is like. Okay. Then in the bottom part, we're describing a few situations. So situation 1, Chevy is studying the fuel efficiency of their new line of cars. A sample of 35 of their 2017 Chevy Volt hybrids yields an average miles per gallon of 35.5. And so we want to identify the population, any categorical or quantitative variables, and if a value is given, what is that? Is that a statistic? Is it a parameter? What is that exactly? So for the first one, note first that 2017 Chevy Volt hybrids, that's not that they made 2017 of them, it's that it's the model year 2017. Okay, so the population is all of the 2017 Chevy Volt hybrids ever made. There's a tendency to think, especially initially, that it's 35 of them. But we'll assume that there are more than 35 of those types of cars made. And also, there's a hint here that tells us that it was a sample of 35, and so 35 is the sample. Okay. All right. So what's being studied? So they're looking at 35 of these cars, and what are they looking at? What are they measuring? They're measuring their fuel efficiency, and they're expressing that in terms of miles per gallon. And so 65.5 miles per gallon. And so that unit, that's an average, and it's an average that came from a sample, so that's a statistic, and it's numerical data, and so that's called the X bar, and so X bar equals 65.5. That's the average for that, and N is 35. Okay. And you can try to do those first before you're listening to the video, or you can pause before each situation. So our second situation, candidate is running for election and surveys 200 people and finds that 56% of those people are going to vote for him. So our population here are all of the people who are voting in D.C. All voting eligible people in D.C. That's our population. Okay. So N is 200, and so of all of the voters, he sampled 200 people, and then the 56%. So we go to what's he asking at the time where he's coming in contact with people, and he's saying, who are you going to vote for? And it's either going to be him or somebody else. So that's categorical data. And so the 56% comes from this sample of 200, and so that's a statistic. And so that's a p hat. We don't know the true proportion of all DC voters who are going to vote for him, but from this sample of 200, 56% are going to vote for him, and N is 200. Okay. And then this final situation, Mr. Hood wants to know how many Madison students are drinking and their rate compared to the rest of the nation. And so then SAD reports that 72% of all high school seniors have consumed alcohol during high school. And then 100 Madison seniors were surveyed, and 65 consumed alcohol. So what's the population? Well, it looks like he's trying to compare two populations, and it appears that he's trying to compare Madison seniors as one population versus all of the high school seniors in the country, in the U.S. SAD is a national organization, and so somehow SAD collects this information that 72% of all high school seniors have consumed alcohol in high school. And then from this survey, 100 seniors in Madison, and there are probably about 500 seniors at Madison, 65 of those 100 consumed alcohol. So what are these numbers? The 72%, that's a parameter, and that's describing the proportion of all U.S. high school seniors. And so that would be P. P equals 0.72 for all of the high school seniors in the United States. N is the sample size of Madison students selected, and the 65 is going to help us find our statistic. And so for the proportion of Madison seniors who've consumed alcohol, it's 65 out of the 100, or 65%, or 0.65. And so that describes a characteristic of Madison seniors. So this is a case where they're comparing two different populations. That's it for this page.